Nothing Personal starts in 30 seconds. It's just business. This is Nothing Personal.
Here you go.
Gratitude. That's the Nothing Personal word of the day. It is Monday, December 2nd, 2024. The final month of 2024 has commenced, and I am full of gratitude. Had Thanksgiving, felt really good about it. Contrary to what you may have heard on Le Batard, it was a great, no, it actually wasn't. Le Batard had a funny little thing on Thanksgiving, which I encourage you to watch. My Thanksgiving, I hope yours was healthy and safe and fine, and that you felt gratitude and showed gratitude to all of the people in your life who mean something to you. I felt great gratitude toward family, friends, audience, you, anybody who's watching and listening. I really do have gratitude. Not the type of gratitude that you say you have after you can somebody. That's a different type of gratitude. There was something that happened on Thursday, and I'm going to talk through many layers of what's going on in Chicago. So for all the Chicago fans out there, and based on our live show that we had and all of the percentages that we see, there's a lot of you who are going to be listening to this. So I want to take it in counterparts. Let's start with the Bears on the field. Let's start with what happened in their game on Thanksgiving Day. Let's start with the way that the Bears lost the game. When you watch that happen, and you were watching your coach, Eberflus, who, by the way, has been under the microscope for weeks. Ever since Caleb Williams was drafted, there was a thought that the Bears were going to be something they're not, that he was going to be Mahomesian. And, of course, the reality is always different than what you dream of during the offseason. But the season goes on. You've got losses. You've got wins, more losses than wins. Things aren't great. Maybe they're getting better. Bunch of different reasons that people are angry about their coach because you want a better coach when you're not winning. That'll cure all the ills. But you expect your coach to have a minimum level of competency. Not that every call that's played is going to work. It doesn't. Not that every scheme is going to be brilliant, because it's not. But there's a certain thing in your profession, much like coaching a football team, there's a baseline that if you don't know the baseline, it's an automatic firing. So as an example, you can't be a toll collector if you can't count. That'd be a baseline skill that you have to have. I would think that'd be a good one. You can't be an Amazon delivery guy if you don't have a driver's license. Seems like a good one. I feel like that's good. You can't host a podcast if you don't have a microphone. It's a good one. Seems reasonable to me. I don't think you can be an NFL coach if you don't understand clock management. Now, that may sound slightly more hard to define, but I've got one. And I couldn't X it more, tweet it more, or blue sky it more. And I am pleading to the audience to please come to my side of this argument. I'm begging you. I am so tired of first and third quarter timeouts being used to save 5 yards. I can't even tell you. Sick of it. 12 men on the field, timeout. No, I'm on my own 5-yard line. I'll take the penalty. Bring me back to the 2.5, half the distance to the goal line. Repeat the down, no problem. Lost a down, I'm still okay. Timeouts are required in order to save the clock later in the game when you have to use them either defensively to get the ball back or offensively to stop the clock so you can put yourself in position to score to win a game. Timeouts are the greatest currency that a football coach has to alter the outcome of his game. There is no other. It's not about the best running back, the best quarterback, none of it. The greatest asset is your timeout. wasting it. Of course, the opposite side of that is when the game ends and you've got times out left and you're saying to yourself, I bet I could have used one or two of those. I wonder why they're in my pocket. Because there is no rule about a carryover. Once the game ends and you have a timeout left, that's it. You don't get 4 the next half. So the Bears are driving. They're going to upset the Lions. Everything's coming up perfectly for the Bears. They're toward the end of the game. 30 seconds left, clock running, getting ready to run a play. They still have a timeout left. They could use a few yards, but hey, they would have tried a field goal from where they were. Time runs down. No one's calling timeout. Eberflus isn't running on the field doing a roll, stop, drop, and roll toward the referee to stop play. No one's bringing a flag into the middle of the field and placing it right there at the line of scrimmage to stop a play. Nothing. Tick-tock, boom. The game ends on a ridiculous throw by Caleb Williams, who had a heave, not quite a, what's it called, Coca? Not quite a Hail Mary, but close enough. Didn't work. Clock runs out. No field goal attempt. Bears lose. That's it, right? There's nothing to discuss. He's fired. Except the Bears said, we have an idea. Let's not say a word because we don't want to upset his Thanksgiving dinner plans. Give me a break, like I care. He wakes up the next morning, thinks he still has a job, goes to do a press conference thinking he still has his job, meets the media, and then after the morning media meeting Friday, word comes out that the chairman of the Bears, George McCaskey of the famous McCaskey family, and the president and CEO, Kevin Warren, and the GM, Ryan Poles, have decided they're going to fire Matt Eberflus. The level of incompetence from top to bottom with the Bears staggers me. After a play like what happened Thursday, you've got a decision to make as a front office. It's really quite simple. You let 30 minutes pass, and then you have a call. I don't care that it's Thanksgiving dinner. Don't care. 30 minutes passes, you get your owner, your president, your GM, and you say, I don't see a path forward for this coach. There is a mutiny in the locker room. There is an absolute disgust within our fan base. And as the owner and president of this team, I cannot stand for it anymore. And I'm not waiting. Well, let's take a minute. You've never fired anyone during the season in the 105-year history of the Bears. And McCaskey said, I don't care. He went full Maurice Sendak-Pierre. There once was a boy named Pierre who always would say, I don't care. So they say, all right, I guess we're going to fire him. Now what do we do? Well, we need statements. We have to have those ready. Let's come up with some really good quotes. All right, hurry up. What's the quote that we use? Oh, yeah, the one where we're grateful and we wish the family the best. That one. The one that says we extend our gratitude for his commitment to the Bears and wish him and his family the best moving forward. Just take out the other team and put the Bears name in. Okay, we got that. Okay, then we'll need a quote also from the president, Kevin Warren, if you wouldn't mind. Here's what your quote should be. I support Ryan, because we're going to pretend the GM made the decision, which of course he didn't, but good. I support Ryan in the decision that was made this morning. We understand how imperative the head coaching role is for building and maintaining a championship caliber team. Well, if you understood that, you probably would have fired him a while ago, but I digress. Are you only understanding it because of the acute nature of the mistake he made with clock management? Or are you only understanding the imperative that the head coaching role is for building a team because the public outcry was so significant? I'm just wondering, so get back to me on that. Then Warren finished his statement. Our fans have stood by us and persevered through every challenge, and they deserve better results. Our organizational and operational structure is strong, focused, aligned, and energized for the future. Who's with me? Absolute incompetency. This comes out after they let Eberflus speak to the media. They basically hung him out to dry, and their excuse was, hey, we hadn't made the decision by then. Listen, folks, when you're thinking about making a firing, do yourself a favor and don't let the employee who you're thinking about firing continue doing the normal course of his public-facing job. But then the Bears said, but wait a minute, it would have been weird. If Eberflus doesn't meet the media would have speculated that something was up, and we wouldn't want that because we weren't exactly sure what we were going to do. Horse hockey. If the Bears didn't know that they were firing Eberflus 31 minutes after Thursday night's game, then the president, the GM, and the owner should all move on to other occupations. It was an absolute no-brainer. There are certain absolute must-haves. You must have control of your game and your team. It doesn't mean you control the outcome. It doesn't mean you win every game, which is how you can lose games and not get fired. But you have to have control over your players, and you have to have control over the game. It's outrageous. It's not even the most outrageous thing that's going on in Chicago as it relates to all the sports teams. I feel for you, Shaka Khan. I really do. You've got the situation with the White Sox. You've got the Cubs trying to figure out, do I trade Cody or not? Should we keep him? You've got the Bulls. I guess you can be happy with the Bulls. I guess you could think about that. Blackhawks. You got the Bulls and Blackhawks working together for you. You got the White Sox with the new channel. That's going well. Bulls and Blackhawks are developing real estate around the United Center. That's a positive. White Sox are looking for $2 million. What about the Bears? The Bears, they've got a situation. And one of you, strangely enough, and this is from like 5 days ago, so I'm sorry for the delay, but I told you I'd get to this, and now I am. Coca?
You know what I want? I want to talk to Samson.
So you want to talk to Samson. Get into my DMs at David P. Samson on X or Blue Sky, on Instagram, David P. Samson, or at davidsamsonpodcast.com. You can find me. Believe me, thousands find me. So please find me. Ask a question. We'll have some mailbag episodes later on this month. And you never know, it may come up in the show. What's happening, David? Well, you know, the usual. You didn't comment on the Bears Arlington Heights settlement. Does this mean the Bears are moving to Arlington? Well, thank you for asking. Let me catch you up on the Bears Stadium saga. Do you remember they want to build by the lake in downtown, but then they couldn't get any state support? And then they went and bought 300 plus acres in Arlington, and they were going to build in Arlington, but then they had a fight with Arlington because they couldn't agree on property tax. Because, when the public authority owns your stadium, you don't pay property tax. You get all the revenue, but you don't need to pay the property tax like we all pay on our homes if you have ownership of a home. But then the Bears cut an amazing deal. They got together with Arlington Heights and school districts and various people in the council, and they've got a deal. The Bears have reached a tentative agreement, and this will cover any sort of dispute that the Bears have had with Arlington over what taxes would be owed on the stadium and the surrounding development. The reason Arlington Heights Village wanted to cut this deal with the Bears is that they've got 326 acres of non-developed land, and they want the Bears. The equivalent is what the Browns are doing moving out of downtown Cleveland. The equivalent is when the Florida Panthers moved out of Miami to Western Broward. You're in the same area, lowercase, but it's not anywhere near where the stadium was. In Florida, they would call it a relocation if you went from Miami to Broward. That literally, I think people would call it a relocation. Generally, relocations are meant for different demographics, different size markets, different named markets, different located markets. Moving from Chicago to Arlington is not a relocation, but it is a pretty big sea change in your team and its location. So what does it mean? Does it mean that the Bears and the deal they're trying to get done in the city is done? No, it does not. If you asked Kevin Warren right now, he would give you a quote. And he talked about the Arlington deal and how excited he is and how they've had productive conversations, and they'll keep having productive conversations with both the local people in Arlington as well as the local people in Chicago, in the city of Chicago. So here's what is happening. The Bears are unable to get any leverage for relocation outside of Chicago. It's not going to happen. They know that. So they're making up leverage the way the Chiefs are for Kansas City v. Missouri, same area, 2 states. The Bears are just pitting the city of Chicago against Arlington. They are pressuring the state of Illinois to be helpful to keep the team in downtown Chicago, where there is a huge amount of voting power. And the Bears are doing exactly what they should do and will continue to do. So every time you read news that there's been a settlement in Arlington, don't allow for the roller coaster to drive you crazy. The stadium situation in Chicago will be resolved, but it's going to be years, not days, not weeks, not months. There will be a new stadium at some point to replace the renovated Soldier Field. And my money would still say that it's going to be in downtown Chicago, but we will wait to see. But it is very interesting news and pretty expected that they would cut a deal with Arlington. One of the things to watch for, which people may not be talking about, is the tax breaks in Arlington that the Bears want. Are they getting those tax breaks if there's no stadium in Arlington? Can they get those tax breaks on the real estate development that they're doing around the stadium? Because you can bet your bippy that if there's no stadium in Arlington, there's still a huge amount of land to either be developed or sold, and any tax benefits on that land would accrue to the benefit of the landowner. Just keep that in mind. So much happened yesterday and this whole week in the NFL, which seemed like a full week of games. We had Thursday games, Friday games, Sunday games, Monday games. It's like a dream. I want to spend a few minutes talking about Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. I've obviously given you my view of Shad Khan as one of the top 3 poorest owners, and I don't mean financially, just in terms of the way the team is run, the success of the team on the field, off the field, the whole package. They're in a stadium drive in Jacksonville. They cut deals with the NFL to own London, basically, because things were so bad in Jacksonville. That's why they were used as the London team. I've given you my view of Trevor Lawrence, that he is overpaid and that they've got to start over, that he's not good enough to win. Yesterday, the Jaguars played the Texans, and what happened to Trevor Lawrence was as scary as it was shameful, and it was completely avoidable. There's a player on the Texans named Azeez El-Shaair, and if you haven't seen the video, Google it, YouTube it. Trevor Lawrence was running, and he had the ball, obviously, and it was a run play. He was scrambling, but for a gain, and he goes down to slide. The rule in football is for a quarterback, or for any player, frankly, but really it protects the quarterback. When you go into a slide position, the ball is marked where you start the slide, and that's it. There's no touching the player. He's down. You don't have to tackle him. You don't have to put your hand on him to make sure he can't get up again. When you start the sliding process, the play's over. This Texans player was running toward the quarterback full speed, and Trevor Lawrence started to slide, and the player couldn't hold back, didn't want to hold back, wasn't able to hold back, query, slid into, not slid into, the defensive player went head first into Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence ended up back on his head, concussion. He went into the fencing position. They said, I couldn't really tell from the video, but it did not look good. He then went into the tent, into the cart, done. Meanwhile, there was a fight. And the fight happened between, obviously, Jaguars players who were running to the defense of Lawrence, going after the Texans players. You're going to hear from Roger Goodell and other people in the NFL, and I'd like to give them a suggestion before they open their mouths about this, because they talk about wanting to protect the quarterback, and they talk about rule changes that are designed where if you touch the quarterback, it's roughing the passer. All sorts of different rules have been put in place. I've got another one. because I'm very annoyed by the concept of offsetting penalties. If you're not a football fan, you may not focus on it, so I'll just explain it quickly. If you commit a penalty, let's say you rough the passer. Let's say you have a personal foul, unsportsmanlike conduct. That would generally be 15 yards for the other team. So if you're on offense and you commit a penalty, you get pushed back 15 yards. If you're on defense and you commit it, that means the offense gets to advance 15 yards. It's a big deal. That's 15% of the entire field. But in the Texans' case, and in many cases in football, there's a concept called offsetting penalties, which means if one team does something and then the other team does something on the same play, it's offset, replay the down as though nothing happened. But there's no conversation about what the levels are of the penalties. You can have holding on one side and you can have roughing on the other, offsetting. Personal foul, illegal formation, offsetting. Everything's offsetting. I don't quite understand that. I've got a new rule that I'd like to make, that anytime a quarterback is hit, if you really want to protect the quarterback and stop with these fencing concussions where your players are going to get old and end their lives early, if not purposefully, then for all intents and purposes, have them ended early. You really care about the health of your players, which query, there are cogent arguments to be made that the NFL does not care, but I digress. But if you want to feign caring, how about this? Anytime the quarterback has a penalty upon him, whether it's through roughing when he's in the pocket, whether it's a late hit when he's running, anytime there is a penalty against a quarterback, definitionally, it cannot have an offsetting component. Well, let's think about that, David, because if someone roughs the passer, then the offense is going to advance 15 yards, but the offensive players are going to come to the rescue and they're going to be real men and they're going to go after the defensive players. And if they know they can't get penalized or they can't lose the 15 yards, then what would stop them from just an all-out brawl, beating the crap out of the defensive player? I thought you'd think of that. I've got the answer. There's no offsetting penalties. The offense gets 15 yards. But any offensive player who goes after a defensive player, physically, punching, fighting, automatic ejection. Automatic. In the Texans game, the one who got ejected was the one who made the hit. Al-Shaair ejected from the game. I am happy to eject every offensive lineman, every wide receiver, every running back, everything. The NBA did it. No one cared. You can't leave the bench during a fight. That's the rule in the NBA. Hard stop. If you walk off the bench during an on-court fight, you are suspended. Done. It's like sticky stuff in baseball. It's done. I tried to get the rule passed in baseball 1,000 times. Don't let the bullpen people leave the bullpen. The union would never allow it because the union brothers had to stick up for each other. When there's a melee going on the pitcher's mound, the bullpen arms want to get out there and they want to run side by side, looking at each other, saying, yeah, we're about to fight. We got 100 yards. Don't go so fast. I'm out of breath. All right, we're on the mound. Now let's fight. Baseball could do this automatic ejection stuff. So could football. Automatic. Any retaliation against a player who goes after the quarterback is an automatic ejection. Anybody who goes after the quarterback, you're ejected. Your team is penalized. The team is fined. How about that? We'll keep adding. I'll keep adding stuff all day long. I'll go full Lionel Richie. I'll go 24 hours. Except the NFL is loath to do something that could impact the quality of play that particular game or the next particular game. They don't like suspending players, whether it's for drugs, for steroids, for behavior. They're not big fans of it. You really have to do something egregious. I'm not going to get into the compare game of what's egregious because God knows the off-field behavior of some of these players puts the E in egregious. But if you're serious about protecting your players, then protect them. I'm going to give you an official wait to see, Coca. Wait to see. There will be a rule change in the NFL when a quarterback is hit in the head, there will not be offsetting penalties. And you can book it. The other thing you can book if you really want to. Did you watch the Bills game? You're going to hear about it in the Nothing Personal Pick of the Day. You may not remember from last Wednesday, but we're HO triple, baby. We had the Bills and the over last night by the skin of our chinny chin chin. But I was watching the Bills game. I love snow games. How could you not? Games in the snow. Though I got tricked by technology. I don't know how many of you watched it, but if you watched the highlights or if you just watched during the game, I was like, how do they get the numbers? How do they shovel the yard markers on the field so well? How are they doing that? That's so cool. Turns out it was enhanced by the TV network. You just can't believe what you see anymore. But it does get to show you that in a bad footing like snow, it's always better to know where you're going than try to guess where someone's going, which is why the offense seems to benefit the way the Bills benefited by winning that game. And of course, the question must be asked, if you are living in Buffalo or you're the NFL and you've got a team in Buffalo, how can there not be a roof in Buffalo? Is there like pride? And all you Buffalonians, Buffoonians, Buffoonians, who I love Buffalo, by the way, but all of you people who reside in Buffalo, do you love the fact that you get to tailgate outside in the freezing cold? Is it like a rite of passage like in Green Bay? It's your thing? Well, I got news for you. You know what would be better than tailgating in the cold and watching a snow game? Hosting a Super Bowl. That's right. If Buffalo had a full dome, you never know. They could get a Super Bowl because the other owners in football, all they want to do in February is go to Buffalo for a week. All the sponsors want to do, hey, give me a trip to Buffalo. I'm in, baby. The owner of the Bills is paying like a couple $billion to build a new stadium in the parking lot. And apparently about 60 to 70% of the fans are going to be covered, which is really super sweet. It's something that the Dolphins did when they redid Pro Player Stadium. Fans are covered from the heat, from the rain, but players are open to it. I don't know. I never really understood that concept about air conditioning or heating or doming and focusing on fans. And I'll give you a real world example. When we built Marlins Park, God, this is now 15 years ago. We started in 2009 and the plans were started before that. There was a big meeting. That's $5. There was a big meeting we had about the air conditioning inside Marlins Park and which way the vents should point. Do we want the fans to be cool? Do we want the field to be cool? The players to be cool? The dugout, the clubhouse? What is the way? And we went vent by vent, and there's a whole HVAC design that you go through. And I spoke to some players, and players like, hey, we're good. We want to sweat. The pitchers want to sweat so they can use the sweat and the rosin and the sunscreen to get a better grip on the ball. So they were not all that interested. The outfielders were like, hey, we wouldn't mind. Like, it's good to be cool. That would be better. So there's no winning when you're planning for air conditioning, much like there's no winning when you're planning a new stadium, both for players and for fans. But for Buffalo, it fascinates me, the decision they made. And the owner is just sitting there, and they showed him during the game last night, and he was looking at plays or doing whatever he was doing, the Pagula guy. And I was just thinking to myself, how do you go into a stadium project where you have the amount of hundreds of millions of overruns and you really have no discipline to stop the runaway train? Is that because the NFL fund pays and so much public money is going into the stadium that your amount of your investment is really not that large, so it doesn't matter that you're paying for overruns? Because no matter how rich you are, it doesn't make sense to do that at all. But it's going to open in June of 26. It's going to be a hell of a stadium, I guess. And spoiler alert, it still will not host a Super Bowl. All right, the last thing I want to mention on last week is a mea culpa on yesterday's games. I think it's time, Coca. I'm wrong often. It's not that my takes aren't without thought. I think about all of them. and I think I know how things are going to go. And sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm wrong. But I always admit when I'm wrong, like when I don't get a wait to see. I admit it. I thought that the Steelers would be bad. I thought that extending Tomlin was a mistake. I thought that Russell Wilson was finished. And it turns out not only the Steelers win again, but listen to this stat. Mike Tomlin has started his career with 18 straight winning seasons. Now, you can quibble about number of Super Bowls and you can quibble about playoff performance in the last 10 years. Do whatever you want. Winning record, 18 straight years. He's been a coach for 18 years, every year. It's pretty impressive. Now people are saying, the football insiders, that Russell Wilson is the top free agent quarterback. He's been that good. Well, to a team that's looking to sign Russell Wilson, I'd like to introduce you to P.T. Barnum, because there's a sucker born every minute. And if you sign Russell Wilson to one of those crazy Daniel Jones-like contracts, you are going to get in trouble. What am I wrong about, Coca? 18 straight non-losing seasons. What does that mean? Oh, 500 would be a non-losing season. All right, we'll retape that. Ready? 4869. What's amazing about Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers is that he has started his career with 18 straight seasons of 500 or better. That's incredible. To go 18, his first 18. That's his whole career, coaching 18 years, and he's never had a losing record. I was wrong about you, Tomlin, and wrong about this year's Steelers, but I'll tell you where I'm not wrong. Do not be fooled and sign Russell Wilson to one of those crazy contracts. You will regret it. I promise. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to review a movie. I had quite a weekend of movies. And then we're going to talk about what happened in Ohio with the Michigan-Ohio State game, because it was extremely problematic, and we'll discuss it after the break. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. It is David Samson coming at you live, 8 a.m. on the Nothing Personal with David Samson YouTube channel. Please hit subscribe. Thanks for listening to the mailbag on Friday, this past Friday. Appreciate that. We're back live this entire week. Next week, we'll actually be doing our show from Florida. We're going to go in studio with Dan. In the meantime, if it's 10:32 a.m. Eastern, hi. My name's David Samson. Welcome to the DraftKings Network. We're on every day, 10 a.m., leading right into Dan Le Batard at 11 a.m. If you're listening to this, hi, this is David Samson. You've come across our podcast. It's called Nothing Personal with David Samson. Thank you very much for taking the time. We're 50 minutes on sports, culture, entertainment, politics, you name it. We'll talk about it. No fuss, no muss, no BS. Meanwhile, I watch a movie every day. I watch more than one movie on Saturday, way more. I want to review a movie called We Live in Time. It's about to be Oscar time. As a matter of fact, the Golden Globe nominations come out a week from today. Oscar nominations are out in January. The Oscars are March 2nd, 2025, hosted by Conan O'Brien. And so I'm watching movies that are projected to be Oscar nominees. We Live in Time stars Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh, about a couple who meet in a very unusual way, the type of way that only happens in the movies. You can imagine what it is. What's a way in your mind that you could meet only in the movies? Well, that's how these two people meet. Then they fall in love, and then they have a child, and then there's tragedy, and then there's timelines, time lapses, current, future, past, haircut, no haircut. You look young. You don't look young. I don't get where we are. What color's Florence's hair? Ooh, it's not as blonde. All right. Is it short? Is it not short? Garfield, accent, long hair, crying. Never seen a guy's eyes well up as well as Andrew Garfield. Check him out, and We Live in Time. It's unbelievable. I don't know that he uses, like, what's the thing, Coca? Oh, come on, man. That football players use when you put the thing in your nose and it wakes you up. Are you kidding me? Smelling salts. Thank you, Coca. I wonder whether or not there's someone off screen either doing the eye drops or the smelling salts to Garfield right before they hit roll. Because if not, Andrew, you've got the best talent of anyone I know. And it's not the tears running down the street, the cheek. It's the full welling in your eye. It's unbelievable. It like overflows with water, and it makes me want to hug you and hold you. It's called We Live in Time. I've got an idea. Don't live in time. I'm going to save you from watching it. I just did. Something bad happens, then something good happens, then something bad happens, and then something really bad happens. And then there's crying. There is no excuse for there to be fights after a game on a football field. Let me start with that when we're talking about what happened. If you don't know about the Michigan-Ohio State situation, Ohio State lost to Michigan. It is a disgraceful loss for Ohio State. It's a huge win for a program, Michigan, where without Harbaugh, who's now coaching the Chargers, they had stumbled and bumbled their way to a mediocre season. Ohio State had illusions of CFP dominance, maybe even a national championship. And that's it. Michigan won, Ohio State lost, game over, whatever. There's a new thing that's going on, and it's happened North Carolina State. It happened Arizona State, BYU, Houston, Texas A&M came close. North Carolina State. There's this thing that's happening that after a game, the winning team, if they win on the road, they take their school flag, state flag, team flag, pride flag, any flag, and they take it. And for whatever reason, instead of stomping on the opposing team's logo in the middle of the field, they decide to plant a flag in the middle of the opposing team's field. Like, this is my house. Obviously, this goes back to ancient Wild Wild West times. We planted a flag, a stake, not the EAK kind, the AKE kind. And this is our place now. So don't bother me. Oh, you've got a gun and a bow and arrow? All right, we're about to die. You can have your land back. This is not those times anymore. That's not really how it works unless you're the government with eminent domain and you're trying to build a freeway in Florida. Other than that, you generally don't need to put a flag down. There's a legal way that you can get access to land, and then it becomes yours, and you can stop trespassers with reasonable force. For whatever reason, in sports, people take it very personally when you lose a game at home and then the opposing team wants to stake its flag on your home turf. And so what do is they fight. They run up there and they grab the flag. That's what the Ohio State players did. Then before you know it, there's a full melee. There's a full brawl going on. I couldn't find in any of the tapes. And I looked on Twitter, I looked on X, I looked on Blue Sky, I looked on Red Sky and Pink Sky and Green Sky and Coca Sky. Couldn't find coaches. The only thing I found were security, police, who were on the field after a game because they escort the coaches to meet each other. Then they escort the coaches off the team. I think it's really great that college students like to rush the field. Hate it. Shouldn't allow it. Maybe netting is required around the entire stadium. But be that as it may, I'm not a big fan of the goalposts being torn down and walked through a city and thrown in the river. I'm just not a fan of it. But in this case, the fight that was going on between Michigan and Ohio State, it caused the police who were on duty. Keep in mind, the police on duty inside a stadium are being paid time and a half. They are overtime cops. The yellow security guards, the yellow jackets, I'm saying that because that was CSC, but whatever color is of the coat that is worn by the in-stadium security, not uniformed police officers. In-stadium security is who you pay as the team, home team, to secure the players, the fans, etc. All of a sudden, there's pepper spray being used. Pepper spray being used against players, pepper spray being used that somehow got into the eyes of people who were not even players, who were members of the media. Look at this video that Coca has if you're watching this, and I'll describe it if you're listening to this. This is video of what happened when the flag was planted, and this was video taken by our very own Rose at Meadowlark, who ended up getting pepper sprayed herself, which, by the way, caused a whole litany of conversations that needed to take place this weekend, having to make sure that our employee was protected making sure the company's protected, figuring out what's next, what happened, what do we do, what procedures need to be put in place for protection of our employees and protection of media people in general. There will be an inquiry. I assure you of that. There will be consequences because of the actions of the police inside the Ohio State Stadium. What the NCAA did, boy, this was big. They said, hey, we're not going to really do anything. Big Ten, you got this, don't you? Big Ten was like, oh, man, we're on it. We got you covered. We're going to fine Ohio State and Michigan $100,000. It's like fining a baseball player $500 for a uniform violation, and they pay it in advance and laugh in your face. $100,000 is what you're fining in a brawl that took place after a game that had pepper spray involved? Is that the best you got, Big Ten? Are you worried about Ohio State and Michigan as two huge members of your Big 18? Are you worried? I know the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's a really good, important guy, smart as can be. Just throwing it out there. Is this like an opening salvo? Is this the beginning? There's going to be suspensions later? Or are we okay with brawling after a game? Here's what you do after you win a game. If I'm the coach, athletic director, general manager, president of the university, I've got an idea. When we win a big road game, I want to salute our fans who traveled as we walk off the field. I'm going to tip my cap to them, hold my hand to my heart, and say, bless you. Thank you so much for coming to the game and traveling all this way. We're now going to go to the clubhouse to celebrate. You go ahead and celebrate safely on your own. If you are the home team and you win a big game, look around at your fans. You maybe want to do a lap, do some high fives, and then walk off the field. If you lose the game as a road team, do me a favor. Get off the field. You lost the game. Go to your clubhouse. This video is an example of a team going crazy. It's absurd what Michigan did. It's absurd how the Ohio State players reacted, and it is criminal what the police did in that instance. All of those things happen to be true. There's one thing I can tell you that is almost guaranteed. You cannot, as the NCAA or the Big Ten, allow this situation to go unchecked, and checking it is not a $100,000 fine. There will be more statements. There'll be more comments. There'll be more punishments. There have to be. Because think about the seriousness of the media or the coaches or the students or the fans, some of whom have permission to be on the field, some of whom don't. Getting hurt, pepper sprayed, trampled. Nothing. Personal pick of the day. We needed to win 14 in a row to get back to even before the end of December. Since that time, we've won 4 in a row. You can't win 14 in a row without winning 4 in a row. We swept this weekend. We are now 162 and 172. Tonight's pick is big, Coca. It's BIG, because getting back to single digits. We had the Mavs +4 at home against the Knicks way back on Wednesday night. That was a weird game. Luka didn't play. Klay Thompson didn't play. And the Mavericks crushed the Knicks. Basketball is funny. Thursday, we had the Cowboys over the Giants. That was a really tough one. I have no idea who was on the other side of that. I don't know how that was the market, but it was, and we won. And then last night, we won extra because we had a parlay. That's a +151 according to the odds when we gave you that bet on Wednesday. We had the Bills money line and over 44.5. And, I mean, what an easy call on the over in the snow. The final score was 35-10. I mean, it went over by a mile. Tonight, we got Monday Night Football. It's the Denver Broncos and the Cleveland Browns. You know where I stand on this. The Browns are without Deshaun Watson. The Broncos are actually in the playoff hunt, could make the playoffs with, I was going to say Jason Nix, but that's either baseball or basketball player. Bo Nix, I believe, is the name. He's the one who I watched during preseason in Denver. The Broncos got a chance, and they're only favored by under a touchdown. I had this line at about 8.5. It's 6. We're taking the Broncos and giving the points. All right, stay with me. 6 minutes. When I say what I'm about to say, don't panic. You're going to read a lot of stuff today about Joe Biden pardoning Hunter Biden. Don't click off. Please hear me out. I'm begging you, and here's why. I just want to spend a few minutes on it. I want to talk about a pardon. Pardons have been happening forever. I am not defending what Joe Biden did. I'm not defending what Donald Trump did. They've both used pardons. Wait a minute. Just about every single president has used his constitutional right to pardon people at the end of their term. You understand that it is a power, a unilateral power. Our government has branches that are supposed to check each other. The judicial branch, the legislative branch, the executive branch. There's supposed to be checks and balances of power. Some are supposed to be political, some are not. Guess what? The Constitution has a bunch of articles and sections. One of them is Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1 in our Constitution, and it is clear as day. There is no way to interpret it any differently, and that is what gives the president the right to pardon. And it talks about, and it's been litigated by the Supreme Court, what are the four corners of the ability of the presidential pardon? Under what scenario? It's very simple. There are no limits to what the president can do and who he can pardon as long as it's a crime against the United States. You can't pardon someone who's in the middle of a land dispute against someone else civilly. Oh, we're going to make a decision. You win, you don't. Nope, that's not the power under the Constitution. Stop thinking it is. Oh, this is a state situation? Nope, not pardonable. Federal crimes, offenses against the U.S., hard stop. Hunter Biden was convicted of a crime, a federal crime. You can debate whether or not he deserved to be convicted. You can debate whether or not you would have pardoned him as his father or president. You cannot debate the power that Biden has to pardon his son, Hunter, whether it's his son or a stranger. Donald Trump pardoned the new ambassador to France. Charlie Kushner is a criminal, a convicted felon, pardoned by Trump. Guess what that means? You can't get the time back that you served in prison. Kushner served the time, but you get to take it off your resume. You get to vote. You get to not have to answer questions. Have you ever been convicted of a felony? Convicted? I'm pardoned. Hunter Biden filled out an application, wanted to get a gun, didn't disclose he was a drug addict, didn't pay taxes, whatever the case may be, convicted. None of it matters. What matters is that now there are people who are reading what Joe Biden did yesterday, and they're saying this is an absolute abuse of power. It is not. It's exactly the power the president has. And as for people being upset, Joe Biden kept saying he won't pardon Hunter. 4869. For people being upset that Biden said, I will not pardon Hunter. If you were upset about politicians who switch and change their mind on things, there'd be no politicians left to like. There are no politicians, and I'm not defending Biden. He is single-handedly responsible for the presidential election and the results of it. And I'm not blaming or upset with Trump for the pardons he does or did. I'm trying to give you the information that when people are making arguments to you today, call their BS. Explain to them that what Joe Biden did is exactly within his presidential powers. And yeah, he changed his mind. It happens. Does he believe that Hunter Biden was improperly convicted? I don't care. Does he believe that the Justice Department is totally politicized and that Hunter's going to be targeted by the Trump administration? I don't care. Does Trump go after Biden when Trump becomes president? Within the bounds of the law? You got to follow the law. Other than that, I don't care. We have a structure in place that I believe in with all of my heart. I believe in our Constitution. I believe in the rights of the people to enforce the provisions of the Constitution against each other and their government, and the government to do the same against them. And how does anyone not believe that? So please do not get caught up in the insanity that will be today when people talk about and weaponize what Biden did. Be informed enough to have the argument about what's good for one is good for the other. That's how you begin to unite a country, instead of being on polar opposite sides and trying to argue your way or the highway. Why don't we find commonality? Or you could just say to someone, it's just business. See you tomorrow. This is nothing personal.